All right, folks, today we have some absolutely explosive information for you. You will not want to miss this. We have with us Dr. Judith Reisman, one of my favorite people. She is a professor in the psychology department at Liberty University. And on top of that, she is also the world's foremost expert on Alfred Kinsey. Probably some of you don't even know who Alfred Kinsey is. Well, he is the pervert responsible for the fact that children all across this land and all over the world are being sexualized and indoctrinated, starting in kindergarten, into perversion and other things. Dr. Reisman, thank you so much for being with us. It's great to have you today.
Thank you for having me here today, Alex. Yeah, it's good to talk with you.
Oh, it's great to talk to you also, Judy. And as you know, I've been a huge fan of your work for a very long time. It's so important what you have exposed. So I want to start off by talking about something that, as far as I know, is not really out there in public yet. I was very privileged to see a draft of a report that you're working on that involves Alfred Kinsey and his connections to the Central Intelligence Agency. So, if you would, Judy, just tell us a little bit about Alfred Kinsey. Why is he important? And then, how does the CIA fit into all this?
Yeah, well, it was a real surprise to me that he did fit into the MK Ultra CIA undercover. Well, it wasn't just undercover, salacious, behind the scenes, covert activity during just following World War II is the time that he would have been involved. But I mean, it started during World War II with their MK Ultra techniques of brain control. So and LSD use and so on. So he came into this picture when I got a magazine. It was a Look magazine of from 1951. Suddenly came into my possession, and I began to read it, and it turned out that he would have been directly involved with the CIA and 180 or so other scientists during just following World War II in all kinds of malevolent, vicious activity. And so I followed that trail, and that's what the report really is on. I mean, look, Alex, I'd been trying to figure out why I was stonewalled and stymied all these years when I tried to explain, I tried to show, and I could show the documents that Kinsey was responsible for the sexual violence, sexual abuse of hundreds, 2,035 children, the youngest being 2 months of age. And I brought this into the DOJ and OJJDP, Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention, and Department of Justice. And they said, wow, this is incredible, explains so much. This was back in 1984. And so everything spun off from there with a grant I got from them, but then stymied all the way after that. 1984. Um, and here we are today with as you said when you opened up, not everybody at all knows who Kinsey is, but he changed every life. Every single one of us has had our lives impacted hugely by this guy and the pretense that he was a scientist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
thank you
Well,
for that,
thank
Judy.
you.
And I'll tell you, I am anxiously awaiting the release of this report. I think this is information that the American people absolutely must see. So, for those of you out there who maybe are not familiar with the CIA's Project MK Ultra or Alfred Kinsey's perversion, well, MK Ultra was a documented CIA program. They were learning about mind control, as Dr. Reisman mentioned. They were using LSD on mental patients. Of course, these were in many cases non-consenting patients who were involved in these things. Horrifying, sick crimes, and the CIA bigwigs managed to shred a lot of the documents before we could get a hold of them. But a lot of documents survived, and so we know some of what was going on there. And then Alfred Kinsey. In fact, I learned most of what I know about Alfred Kinsey from Dr. Reisman. She's written 3 books on the subject, and this is a guy, and I want to bring you back in here, Judy. This is a guy who pretended to be a scientist, who pretended to be a sex researcher, and really what he was doing. Tell us a little bit about the abuse of children here, because he actually left the documentation right in his own books. Judy, how is it that for so
Absolutely.
many decades people didn't realize what was being said here?
He was the most well-cited and still is the most well-cited so-called experts. All of the LGBTQ people, all of transgender, everybody says this was our hero. This man put us on the map. NAMBLA, the North American Man Boy Love, quote unquote, association, had him on their website. I think they still do. I check every once in a while, in which they said, everything started with Dr. Kinsey. He had all these charts and graphs right in his the most famous book in the world at the time. 1948, Sexual Behavior in the Human Male. 1953, Sexual Behavior in the Human Female. This began the move toward the sexual revolution. As soon as all of his Rockefeller, by all always Rockefeller funded all his stuff. And as soon as it was out into the press, and it looked like he was going to be in trouble because they started to investigate the Rockefeller Foundation in 1954, 53. As soon as that happened, they took their money, which they'd been using to fund Kinsey, and moved it into creating an American Law Institute model penal code, which was the way all of our laws were changed, all of our sex laws. We're only talking really about the sex laws. You know, I people are shocked when I tell them that in 1948, 1950, 50, half the states gave the death penalty for rape. You didn't have to be raping a child. Simple rape. Half the states, the other half mostly could give you life, you know? It was again, it was a felony in California to to seduce a girl, a female, an adult, and I love you desperately. I want you to be the mother of my children, but we can't get married right now. That would be called seduction. And seduction was even a felony in California. And Playboy became Kinsey's pamphleteer. Hefner was most people have heard of him. Yeah, still.
Hmm.
He was a virgin in college, like most guys. He was 22 when he had his first experience with his fiance. And then he read Kinsey. And when he read Kinsey, he said, oh my gosh, 25% of our women who are married, our wives, have committed adultery. About the same number are having abortions. Most guys are adventurous, and having sex all over the place. He said, and I've been a virgin all this time. So he said, I will be Kinsey's pamphleteer. Words. That's what he called himself. And he was, and outspun from the so-called scientific revolution. The sexual revolution was the result of, quote, science and the pornography revolution, which was Hefner, who did, by the way, consistently print cartoons and then finally photos and so on of children being sexually assaulted. Yeah, yeah. I won a case
Yeah.
on that in the Netherlands.
I remember you were telling me about that. That's so fascinating. Playboy came after you, and you managed to beat them back, which is really encouraging. Judith, so I know in your research you were going through Kinsey's propaganda. What was it? Human sexuality or sexuality in the human male. And he's got these charts in there. He's got table, what is it, 30, 31, 32, 33, and 34, where he
Right.
actually documents the sexual abuse of little
Yes.
children. I mean,
That's
I think I saw there was a 5-month-old girl, a 4-year-old boy, and basically, I mean, not to get too graphic, but they sexually tortured these children and
yes.
raped and abused
Yes.
them. And then they
Yes.
said, "Oh, look, they're passing out, they're screaming, they're crying, and that
Yes.
must mean having a climax. That means
Yes.
they're sexual from birth." Explain how this insane so-called research. I mean, that would be like asking a rapist, if his victim enjoyed it, well, of course, the rapist will say, oh, yeah, she loved it, right? But
Mhm.
explain how this sexual abuse and torture of children in this so called research led eventually to the sexualization of children in government schools through sex education. I think it's a really unknown field, but it's just so important. Talk about that a little bit, if you would.
Sure. I mean, well, it never used to be that we taught this. We had hygiene, when I was a kid in school. And that was one class, and we were told, look, if you have sex before you get married, you could get a venereal disease. You could get pregnant. You don't want to get pregnant. And so just don't do that, and wait until you can find the person you can trust and love your lifetime, and you get married, and then you can have it's going to be wonderful. It's going to be great. Yeah. Well, Kinsey stepped in with his material, his claims that children are sexual from birth. Children are sexual from birth. Now, his position was that they have to have sex experiences because they won't be happy. The reason we had divorces, by the way, compare the divorces then to now, in those years, was because people didn't know enough about sex. And so he's going to teach them about sex. Well, he couldn't teach them about sex because he was the big scientist. So he brings in Mary Calderon from Sex Information Council and Sex and Council of the United States, SICUS. She and her cronies at the Kinsey Institute then will form the outreach, the sex education outreach to schools, which then she does with her backing from, again, the Rockefeller Foundation and from, of course, Planned Parenthood, which, by the way, it ends up being International Planned Parenthood that's doing this, of course, nationally. I mean, internationally. So he says they have to be taught about no, sex, masturbation, and intercourse to some extent. Anyway, it starts off mild, but conditioning being what it is, you start light. You start with light material, and you move your way out. And so, little by little, he would expand. Not he, but then SICUS does, Sex Information Council of the United States, and they begin to develop based on the science that comes out of Kinsey, which is coming out of those rapes of all those little babies and children. By the way, most of them were little boys. Kinsey himself was a bi-homosexual pederast. He was a sadomasochist. He died apparently of orchitis, which is great damage to your organs from doing things to your organs that you shouldn't be doing. And
To
yeah,
put it
and
mildly,
so,
yeah.
well, yeah, I mean, if I describe what he did, I mean, the whole place would blow up. No, no. So yeah, and of course he committed adultery. So everything he was doing, and homosexuality, he said 10% of the population to 37% of the male population are homosexual. Okay, so that starts your homosexual movement, and the homosexual movement says so, by the way. They lay claim to Kinsey as the foundation for their movement. So he says that. Well, of course, he was doing most of his research during World War II, Alex, during World War II. Now, nobody could speak if they were involved in any way, shape, or form with the military, either members of the military or working in military factories or knew their family working, which was everybody. They could not talk to somebody about their personal lives. It was not allowed. Signs everywhere. Loose lips sink ships, right?
Mhm.
So, well, you wouldn't remember, but anyway,
I
I
bet I know
remember.
about what you're talking about. Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Yeah,
Loose leaf, lip sync
yeah,
chips. That's a very
yeah.
well known statement.
So if it turns out 86 to 87% of his population was not normal, they were prisoners, they were prostitutes, and he says so. He says he had 1,400 sex offenders. who were that was his population. But that was put out to the country as the normal American man and the normal American woman. That the names of his books, if he had named his book Sexual Behavior in the Aberrant Male,
All right.
no, seriously,
Hmm.
sexual behavior in the aberrant male or behavior in the abnormal male. And he said 10 to 37% of the population is homosexual. They are all engaged in these sexual activities. Then we would say, oh gosh, we want to be healthy. We want to be, have a good life. So we won't engage in those activities. But he said it was normal. And by saying it was normal, that meant everybody could begin to practice those things. And the minute you put something into the law and you say legally that it is okay, then it becomes okay to teach it in the classroom. And when you've dumbed down your population, made them unaware of the whole issue of morality to such an extent that they don't really understand, even parents, the parents who have been involved in monkey business, the next generation of the sexual revolution brought in the drugs, which by the way is connected to MK Ultra and the CIA. But anyway, so it goes on and on. And so then the law makes it legal to teach everything, which makes it legal, and you have to begin to teach LGBTQ, LGBT at first, no, LGB at first. You have to teach that because children who are illegally to be engaged in sexual activity, and so you shouldn't teach them that anyway. You're going to teach them the directions of how to do it if they're gay, if they're lesbian, or if they're bisexual. And then you're going to teach them how to do it if they're trans. And what you're doing, of course, is you're traumatizing children and now at the youngest ages in kindergarten, you're traumatizing them because there is no way that the small brain, the small child, especially even if they come from a totally harmless, friendly family, much less the ones who've been sexually abused, there's no way that that child can handle the kind of stimulation that they're getting in the classroom today.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
want to ask you
I
about
want to
that,
ask you
Judith,
about
because
that, Judith,
I read some
I
books
read some
by
books
Dr.
by
Melvin
Dr. Melvin
Anschel,
Anschel,
who was involved
Yeah.
with
who
the
was
federal
involved with the
government.
federal government. And,
One of the things that
one of
really
the things that
struck me
really
was
struck
how
me how
harmful this
harmful
kind of so-called
kind of
sex
so-called
education is
education
to the children and later into
children
their
and later
adult
into their
lives. I mean,
adult
he was
lives.
saying, this is
Saying
going to affect
it's
their
going to affect
marriage,
their
this is going to
marriage,
affect their
affect
child
their
rearing, their
child
future
rearing,
family, their psychological makeup. So talk a little bit, if you would, about the damage that this does, first of all, to the individual, and more broadly, the damage that it does to the society. I know when last we spoke, you talked about how this could very well lead to kind of the collapse of our civilization, the loss of our liberty, the imposition of more and more government measures to control human activity. So talk a little bit about the damage this does to the individual and the damage it does to the society. And as you just pointed out, it's all based on pseudoscientific quackery. So what kind of harm is this doing to us?
Well, worse than that, it's based on pedocriminal
Yeah.
quackery. I mean,
Mm.
this was a pedophile, a pederast who wanted the world to be in his image, right? And look at if it'll give you a sense of what it's doing if we look at him and the way he died, right? I mean, yeah, and that is indeed what is taking place. Um, as you lose your children's innocence, as you give that up to the government, to the state to teach them these obscene things. By the way, it is legal to teach obscenity, to give obscenity to small children. It is legal. And let me repeat that. To give obscenity, things that are illegal for the adult community outside the schoolroom. Obscenity, obscene material is illegal outside, right? Right? You
Hmm.
cannot do that. It is legal if you do that in the school under the rubric of education, right? So that is the reason when you look at some of these books that have been coming out, which are given to the children. I There's a young woman who's done a wonderful book on that, Debbie DeGroff,
Mhm.
about
I have
mm,
it, actually. I'm looking
yeah,
forward to interviewing her. It's incredible the filth that's in these books for
yeah,
little
yeah,
children. It breaks your heart.
yeah. And you give this to the children. You give this to the little 6-year-old. Well, you're wondering why little children. We had 14,000 children in school in within 1 year who were sexually abusing other children. The AP did the research on that. Thank you very much for that. Uh, 14,000 in 1 year. Excuse me? Now you talk about COVID and the pandemic, right? Let me tell you, the pandemic right now, and that has been going on consistently for some years, the traumatizing of our children, COVID cannot compare to that because no, they can't survive. Uh, some will squeak by, but they're so traumatized. They're damaging. Well, the sexual abuse. My goodness, you have to have somebody go with a child to the bathroom, and this was even before boys decided they could be girls, and and they could go in, and men decided they were women, so they could go into the bathrooms, and it doesn't matter, or the locker rooms, and they can rape and so on. Anyway, that's for another time. But you have to have somebody go in with those children all the time if they go to the bathroom, because they're being sexually abused by other children. You cannot raise an American society which stands on independent thinking and belief in our Constitution. You cannot raise children that way. You cannot bring up a healthy society. And if you cannot bring up a healthy society, if they are so corrupted, they are easily controlled by governments. They will set fires to churches,
Yeah.
okay? They will try to blow up the Alamo. They will knock down things all over the country. They will take their revenge. They will take their revenge, black and white.
So you think that might be, part of what we're seeing right now with the rioting and the looting, huh? Which leads me right into my next question, Judith. In the last few minutes we have left here, what do we do about this? I mean, first of all, as individual parents trying to raise small children in this insane world, what does a parent do to protect their children from this? And at a broader level, what sort of obligation does the government have to protect, the innocence of children from this kind of abuse? I mean, should we have criminal investigations? I know there's still a Kinsey Institute operating at Indiana University, just right there in the open, flagrantly funded by taxpayer money, no less. Of course, we know they've been involved with the Rockefellers and all this. So, what do parents do? What do families do to protect their children from this? And what should government do to put a stop to this lawlessness, this criminality?
Well, we have been calling for an investigation, obviously, of the Kinsey Institute. One of the things that there's a group in Indiana that's growing, and that's calling for an investigation of the Kinsey Institute. Why the Kinsey Institute? Because that's the foundation of all this other garbage, these lies that have choked our nation for almost 70 years. Um, so we're figuring that's why if we can just expose the root of everything that has happened, so many people are suffering. There's venereal disease is common with our young people. They have gotten to the point where they think it's normal. They don't even understand that that's not normal, that they have to suffer like this all their lives. So yeah, the obligation is on the part of the government to support us, to get an investigate the basis of where we have come to, the basis of where we've ended up with people who don't even have thinking minds, cognitive minds, or moral minds that allow them to do the kind of destruction be engaged in the kind of destruction they're engaged in. Homeschool, there is no way that people can really keep their children in the government schools today. Whatever one has to suffer to take care of their children at home and educate them at home, I urge them to do that. But that may be a solution for the individual parent. But until we do a proper gut wrenching investigation of the Kinsey Institute, removing it, exposing everything that it's been built on, rapes of thousands to up to 2,035 children, torture, which has definitely been part of the CIA MK Ultra program. All this has got to happen. They have an app that is soliciting crimes across the world, an app called the Kinsey Reporter, where you can give information and be a citizen scientist, is what they call it, about the rapes that you've committed and so on. And they will simply not turn you in. You're anonymous, and they let all that go up as though this is normal. So it's got to be stopped. They've got to be stopped. It's happening on everybody's watch now. Instead of looking around and saying, oh my gosh, how terrible, there is a solution. We have got to pull it out by its root, and we may see some change for the good.
Yeah. Dr. Reisman, I can't thank you enough. You are a hero in my book for exposing these things. I couldn't agree with you more. It's way past time for the government to get involved here. We need some real investigations. Dr. Reisman, before I let you go, if you would, I know you've written 3 books on Kinsey. I know you've written books on other subjects, including pornography. I know you've been featured in numerous documentaries, and you have your own website. Tell us real quick, if people want to learn more about this, what books would you recommend that they get, and where can they get them? How do they find your website? And what can they do to support your work? What can they do to get involved in this struggle?
Well, anybody who wants to give me about $35 million, like the Rockefellers,
Wouldn't it be
and
nice if we had some billionaire sugar daddies on our
and
side? Huh?
Soros and all those guys, that would be nice. But short of that, go to my website. It's the Reisman Institute, REISMAN Institute.com. Contraland is a film I'm just now have a section on sex trafficking of children, which is by the Veterans for Child Rescue. Super terrific film, just came out. Get that. But on my website, there are tons of videos, documentaries, backing up everything that I've said. Understand, if everything that I'm saying has been blocked from your audience, for so long, why, by whom, it is so clear. The documentation cannot be refuted. And as I said, the one time I got to go to the court on Playboy for child pornography in the Netherlands, I won that and they lost. So all this can be proven in a court of law. We've got to get it in there before I leave the world behind. Yeah. So yeah, please.
Well, Dr. Reisman, thank you so much for your work. Folks out there, you just heard, I think, one of America's heroes right now. Make sure you go to her website, follow up on this, guys. This is so important. It affects every one of our lives. It affects our children. It's going to affect our grandchildren. As our society is collapsing, burning down all around us, our cities are on fire. People are hating on each other, and big part of the problem is this indoctrination that, as you just heard from Dr. Reisman, probably the world's top expert on this, it's all based on criminal pseudoscience. I mean, there's not even a legitimate scientific foundation for this. It is destroying our families, it's destroying our children, and it's destroying our civilization. So thanks for watching, Dr. Reisman. God bless you, viewers out there. God bless you all. Make sure you like, share, subscribe. If you don't share this, it's not going to get out there. YouTube is doing everything possible. Facebook is doing everything possible to shut us down. So make sure you get this out there, folks. Thanks again, and God bless you all.